Mr. Harrison stopped in the doorway of his office, his heart in his throat. He could hear the loud music, but what he saw left him frozen. There was the new nanny, Sarah, her arms raised in celebration, and before her, dancing gleefully on top of his mahogany desk, were his 3 triplet daughters. His daughters, the ones he had never seen smile, were radiant. Tears of pure joy welled up in the billionaire's eyes. "Sarah, I don't know what to say," he stammered, stepping into the room with a wide smile. I've never seen them so happy." What Mr. Harrison didn't know was that the happiness he was witnessing ran far deeper than just a new friendship. He was witnessing the impossible. But before we see the moment he realizes the miracle, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into the full story. They all quit, every single one of them. What am I supposed to do now? Robert Harrison gripped his phone tightly, pacing across the polished hardwood floors of his home office. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a room that felt as cold and empty as the rest of his sprawling mansion. "I understand, sir," Jennifer, his executive assistant, replied with practiced calm. "I'll arrange interviews for new candidates immediately. Should I prioritize experience with deaf children again?" Robert sighed, running his hand through his salt and pepper hair. "Yes, and this time, find someone who won't run away after 2 weeks." He ended the call and stood still for a moment, staring out at the perfectly manicured lawn of his Brookline estate. At 40 years old, Robert had everything money could buy. His company, Harrison Technologies, had revolutionized accessible software. Yet here he was, unable to keep a nanny for his own deaf children. A soft knock on the door frame pulled him from his thoughts. Mrs. Beatrice Collins, his elderly housekeeper, stood with a concerned expression. "The girls are waiting for breakfast, Mr. Harrison," she said, "and they're asking where Miss Peterson went." "I'll be right there," Robert replied, straightening his tie. Ms. Peterson decided this job wasn't for her after all. Mrs. Collins frowned but said nothing. She had been with the family since before the girls were born and had witnessed the parade of caregivers who came and went with increasing frequency. In the kitchen, Emma, Lily, and Grace sat at the large marble island. Though identical with their bright red hair, inherited from their mother, their expressions couldn't have been more different. Emma, the natural leader, was helping Lily arrange her hair clips. Lily, the sensitive one, was focused intently on lining up her cereal pieces in perfect rows. Grace, ever curious, had dismantled her napkin holder and was examining the spring mechanism inside. Robert cleared his throat to get their attention. 3 pairs of blue eyes looked up at him. "Good morning, girls," he signed, his movements precise but somewhat stiff. "Where is Ms. Peterson?" Emma signed back, her small hands moving with the fluidity that always made Robert feel clumsy by comparison. "She had to leave," Robert replied, his fingers forming each sign carefully. "We'll have someone new soon." Emma's expression hardened. She signed quickly to her sisters, too fast for Robert to follow completely, but he caught phrases like "always leaving" and "never stays." "I have meetings today," Robert signed, "but I'll be home for dinner." The girls nodded simultaneously, a synchronicity that still startled him sometimes. Mrs. Collins placed bowls of fruit in front of each child. "I'll watch them today, sir, but my hip isn't what it used to be." "Thank you, Beatrice. Jennifer is arranging interviews now." As Robert gathered his briefcase and phone, he felt a tug on his sleeve. Grace looked up at him, pointing to a small electronic device on the counter, one of the many assistive technologies he'd installed throughout the house. She pressed a button, and a computerized voice said, "Will you bring us something from your office?" Robert smiled, one of his few genuine smiles of the day. "Yes, I'll bring you something interesting." The downtown offices of Harrison Technologies occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek glass building overlooking Boston Harbor. Robert's corner office offered panoramic views, but he barely noticed them as he moved from one video call to another. Between meetings, Jennifer appeared with coffee and a tablet. "I've scheduled 3 interviews for tomorrow morning at your home," she said. "All candidates have experience with deaf children and know American Sign Language. Their profiles are on your tablet for review." "Thank you," Robert said, already scrolling through the information. "Did you run background checks?" "Complete checks on all 3. The most promising is Sarah Johnson. 10 years of experience, excellent references." Robert nodded absently, already mentally moving to his next meeting. "The Thompson contract, revised and ready for your signature," Jennifer finished, placing a folder in front of him. "Also, your dinner with the Japanese investors tonight. Cancel it," Robert said suddenly. "I promised the girls I'd be home." Jennifer paused, then nodded. "I'll reschedule for next week." After she left, Robert stared at the framed photograph on his desk. 3 identical baby girls in matching pink blankets, held by a radiant woman with flowing red hair and a brilliant smile. Catherine. His chest tightened, as it always did when he looked at the only family portrait they would ever have. That evening, Robert arrived home earlier than usual. He found Mrs. Collins in the kitchen, looking exhausted as she prepared dinner while the girls sat in the adjacent family room with their tablets. "Thank you, Beatrice," he said, setting down his briefcase. "You should rest now." "They've been good girls today," she replied, wiping her hands on her apron, "but they need more than an old woman and a busy father can give them." Robert nodded, knowing she was right but unsure how to fix it. Dinner was a quiet affair. The girls ate methodically, occasionally signing to each other but rarely including their father. Robert tried asking about their day but received only brief responses. He felt the familiar wall between them, not just the silence of their world, but his inability to truly enter it. After tucking the girls into bed with a signed story about brave princesses, Robert retreated to his study. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk, pulling out a worn photo album. The images showed a younger, happier Robert with Catherine. Their wedding, vacations, the day they found out they were expecting triplets. Catherine's joy radiated from every photograph. "You should have been here," he whispered to her image. "You would have known how to reach them." A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Marcus Wilson, his oldest friend and the family physician, stood in the doorway. "Your security system recognized my car," Marcus explained. "I was driving by and saw the lights on." "Bad day?" Robert gestured to the chair across from him. "The newest nanny quit. 5th one this year." Marcus sat down, declining the offered drink with a shake of his head. "The girls are challenging." "The girls are perfect," Robert corrected sharply. "It's everything else that's wrong." Marcus nodded, understanding the defense of a protective father. "Have you considered specialized help? Not just a nanny, but someone trained in deaf education? We have tutors, speech therapists, sign language instructors," Robert listed. "The house has every assistive device money can buy. What else am I supposed to do?" "Be their father, not their provider," Marcus said gently. "You're trying to solve their deafness, like it's a software problem." Robert stared into his glass. "I built a fortune-making technology accessible for people with disabilities. The irony isn't lost on me that I can't help my own daughters." "They don't need fixing, Robert. They need connection." Meanwhile, in a high-rise laboratory in New York City, Dr. Sarah Johnson stared at the tiny device in her palm. Under the powerful microscope lamp, the neural hearing aid looked impossibly small, a marvel of biomedical engineering. "You're making a mistake," Dr. James Peterson said from across the lab table. "The clinical trial protocols exist for a reason." Sarah carefully placed the device in a protective case. "The FDA approval process will take years. There are children who need this technology now. Metasonic won't back unauthorized testing," Peterson warned. "You're risking everything we've worked for." "I'm risking my career," Sarah corrected, "not yours." She closed her laptop and began packing equipment into a specialized case. Her phone chimed with an email notification. The subject line read, "Nanny position, Deaf triplets, Boston. Sarah opened the email, scanning the job description. 3 8-year-old girls, deaf since birth. Father seeking experienced caregiver with ASL fluency. A slow smile spread across her face as she typed a response, attaching a carefully edited resume that highlighted her childcare experience while omitting her doctoral degree and research position. "What are you doing?" Peterson asked, watching her with concern. "Taking a leave of absence," Sarah replied, closing her laptop with newfound determination. "I've found my test subjects." Sarah Johnson stood at the massive oak doors of the Harrison mansion, her heart racing as she pressed the doorbell. The echo of chimes sounded inside. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her suitcase, the one with hidden compartments containing her experimental hearing devices. The door swung open, revealing Robert Harrison in a crisp white shirt and dark blue tie. His tired eyes studied her with cautious interest. "Miss Johnson?" he asked, extending his hand. "Yes, that's me. Thank you for scheduling this interview so quickly," Sarah replied, giving her most confident smile while shaking his hand. "Please come in. My assistant says your experience with deaf children is extensive." Sarah stepped into a grand entryway with marble floors and a sweeping staircase. Family photographs lined the walls, 3 identical red-haired girls at various ages, always together. "Yes, I've worked with deaf children for many years," she said, carefully choosing her words. Not technically a lie. She had worked with deaf children just as a doctor, not a nanny. Robert led her to his home office, a room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and large windows overlooking a garden. "Please sit down," he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his desk. "I'll be direct, Ms. Johnson. We've had 5 nannies quit this year alone. The girls are wonderful, but their needs are challenging." Sarah nodded. "I understand. Could you tell me more about them?" "Emma, Lily, and Grace are 8 years old. They've been deaf since birth. Their mother died during childbirth." Robert's voice remained steady, but Sarah noticed his jaw tighten. "They communicate primarily through American Sign Language." "And you?" Sarah asked. "Are you fluent in ASL?" A shadow of embarrassment crossed Robert's face. "I know enough to communicate basic needs, but I'm still learning. They sign so quickly among themselves that I often miss things." Sarah smiled and began signing rapidly. Her hands moved with grace and precision as she introduced herself in ASL. Robert's eyebrows raised, clearly impressed. "Your signing is excellent." "Thank you. May I meet the girls?" Robert checked his watch. They should be finishing their lessons now. "Let's see if they're in the playroom." They walked through the mansion, passing rooms filled with expensive furniture that seemed barely used. Sarah noticed specialized equipment throughout the house. Visual doorbells, vibrating alarm systems, and tablet stations for communication. At the playroom door, Robert paused. "I should warn you, they can be reserved with new people." Inside, 3 identical girls with bright red hair sat at different spots in the colorful room. One was organizing books on a shelf, another was drawing at a table, and the third was examining what appeared to be a dismantled clock. "Girls," Robert signed, his movements noticeably slower and more deliberate than Sarah's had been. "This is Miss Johnson. She might be your new nanny." 3 pairs of blue eyes turned toward Sarah with completely different expressions. The girl organizing books, Emma, Sarah guessed, narrowed her eyes suspiciously. The one drawing, likely Lily, looked up briefly before sliding under the table, hiding from view. Only the third girl, Grace, maintained eye contact, studying Sarah with open curiosity. Sarah knelt down to their level and signed, "Hello, Emma, Lily, and Grace. I'm Sarah. I'm happy to meet you." Emma stepped forward, signing rapidly. "How do you know which one of us is which?" "Most people get us confused." Sarah smiled. "Your father told me Emma is the organizer. Lily loves art and Grace likes to figure out how things work. Was I right?" Emma's hands flew in response. Maybe. Why did our last nanny leave? Did Dad tell you? No, he didn't tell me, Sarah replied honestly. She left because she couldn't handle us, Emma signed, her small face serious. They all leave eventually. Well, I'm not planning to leave, Sarah signed back. A throat cleared behind them. An elderly woman with silver hair stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. Mrs. Collins, Robert said, this is Sarah Johnson. She's interviewing for the nanny position. Mrs. Collins gave Sarah a cool appraisal. Another one. Let's see if you last longer than the others. Dinner is in 1 hour, Mr. Harrison. After she left, Robert explained, Mrs. Collins has been with us since before the girls were born. She was close to my wife, Catherine. I understand, Sarah said. She turned back to the girls and signed, Would you show me some of your favorite things in this room? Grace approached first, holding up the dismantled clock. Her hands moved excitedly, explaining how she had figured out what each part did. Lily peeked out from under the table, watching. Only Emma maintained her distance, observing with skeptical eyes. An hour later, Sarah sat across from Robert in his office again. The girls seem to respond to you better than most new people, he said. Are you available to start immediately? Sarah nodded. Yes, I've just finished my previous position. The salary is generous. You'll have your own suite in the West Wing, all meals provided, and 1 day off per week. Robert handed her a thick binder. This contains all the girls' schedules, dietary requirements, medical information, and house rules. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Harrison, Sarah said, accepting the binder. I won't let you down. Mrs. Collins showed Sarah to her room later that evening. The suite consisted of a bedroom, bathroom, and small sitting area, all decorated in neutral tones. The girls have specific routines, Mrs. Collins said, her voice clipped. They use blue cups at breakfast, green at lunch, and red at dinner. Lily won't eat if foods touch on her plate. Emma needs her books arranged by color. Grace will dismantle anything left unattended. Thank you for telling me, Sarah said. Mrs. Collins paused at the door. The others didn't last because they treated the girls like they were broken and needed fixing. They're not broken, Ms. Johnson. They're just different. Her eyes narrowed. What makes you think you'll be different? Sarah met her gaze steadily. I don't see them as broken either. After Mrs. Collins left, Sarah locked her door and opened her suitcase. She carefully removed a false bottom, revealing several small containers holding tiny devices along with a specialized laptop. She placed them in the desk drawer and covered them with notebooks. Just for now, she whispered to herself, until I know they're good candidates. Sarah's first morning started with disaster. She brought the girls breakfast on yellow cups instead of blue. Lily took one look at the yellow cup and burst into tears. Emma glared at Sarah while signing, "Blue cups for breakfast. Always blue." Grace simply watched, her head tilted with interest at this disruption to their routine. "I'm sorry," Sarah signed, quickly replacing the cups with blue ones from the cabinet. Mrs. Collins appeared in the doorway, shaking her head. "Day 1, Ms. Johnson. Not a good start." That afternoon, Sarah interrupted the girls' precise after-school routine by suggesting a new activity. Emma refused to participate, signing that they always read books first, then practice writing, then play games. By evening, Sarah was exhausted. While the girls were with their sign language tutor, she retreated to her room and opened her journal. Day 1. Initial assessment positive. The girls show normal cognitive development and strong communication skills through ASL. Their hearing loss appears to be sensorineural based on the medical records, which would make them excellent candidates for the neural devices. Emma will be the biggest challenge. She's protective and suspicious. Lily seems highly sensitive to changes, which could complicate adaptation to new sensory input. Grace's natural curiosity might make her the best initial subject. Sarah closed the journal and sighed. The weight of her deception felt heavy, but she reminded herself of all the deaf children who could benefit if her devices worked. Her thoughts were interrupted by a crash. She rushed out to find a broken picture frame on the floor of the hallway. She had accidentally bumped a table while carrying laundry. Robert stood at the end of the hall, his expression darkening as he saw the photograph of Catherine lying among shattered glass. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said, kneeling to pick up the frame. "Leave it," Robert said sharply. Then, seeing Sarah's stricken face, he added in a softer tone, "Just be more careful, please." That night, Sarah lay awake, questioning her decision. Was she helping these girls or using them? Could her devices really work, or was she giving them false hope? As she finally drifted towards sleep, she didn't notice her door opening slightly. Emma stood in the narrow space, watching silently, her small fingers signing to herself. "What are you really doing here?" Emma slipped away from Sarah's door just before Sarah turned over in bed. The little girl moved silently back to the bedroom she shared with her sisters, her mind full of questions about the new nanny. Sarah woke early the next morning, determined to do better. After yesterday's mistakes, she needed a new approach. She sat at the small desk in her room, studying the thick binder of household rules. As she flipped through pages of schedules and requirements, she noticed something important. Every previous caregiver had treated the triplets as one unit, with identical routines and expectations. "They're not the same person," Sarah whispered to herself. At breakfast, Sarah made sure to use blue cups. She also placed a small notebook next to each girl's plate with their name on it. "What's this for?" Emma signed, her eyes suspicious. "I want to learn about each of you," Sarah signed back. "Not just as triplets, but as Emma, Lily, and Grace. Could you write or draw things you like in your notebook?" Grace immediately began writing in hers. Lily looked uncertain but picked up her pencil. Emma crossed her arms and pushed her notebook away. Sarah nodded, accepting Emma's refusal. "That's okay, Emma. You don't have to." After breakfast, instead of the usual group activities, Sarah tried something different. She asked Grace to help her set up a simple science experiment with water and food coloring in the kitchen. She gave Lily special art supplies in the playroom. For Emma, she saved the most important job. "Emma, could you help me?" Sarah signed. "I need someone to check on both activities and report back. You're the only one I can trust with this responsibility." Emma's eyes widened slightly. She straightened her shoulders and nodded seriously. Throughout the morning, Sarah noticed Robert watching from his office doorway. When the girls were occupied, he approached her. "What are you doing differently?" he asked. "They seem more engaged." "I'm seeing them as individuals," Sarah explained. "Previous caregivers created one schedule for the triplets, but they have different interests and personalities." Robert looked thoughtful. "I never considered that approach." Later, while the girls had lunch, Sarah noticed Emma following her to the kitchen. "What do you want?" Sarah signed with a friendly smile. Emma's hands moved rapidly. "I saw you last night. You have strange things in your room?" Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She set down the plates she was carrying and knelt to Emma's level. "You're very observant, Emma," she signed. "Those are special teaching tools I use. I'm not ready to share them yet." "What kind of tools?" Emma pressed. "Tools that help children learn in different ways," Sarah responded carefully. "When the time is right, I'll show you. Can you keep this between us for now?" Emma studied Sarah's face, then nodded slowly. "I won't tell Lily and Grace. Yet." That afternoon, Dr. Marcus Wilson arrived for the girls' monthly checkup. Sarah was organizing art supplies when he entered the playroom. "You must be the new nanny," he said, extending his hand. Then his smile froze. "Wait, Dr. Johnson? Sarah Johnson from Columbia University?" Sarah quickly glanced around to make sure they were alone. "Dr. Wilson, please, what are you doing here?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "Last I heard, you were developing neural hearing technology at Metasonic." "I still am," Sarah whispered urgently. "Please don't tell Robert. I'm on leave from Metasonic to test my devices." Marcus looked stunned. "You're using the Harrison girls as test subjects? Without proper protocols? Sarah, that's unethical? Illegal?" Sarah finished. "I know how it looks. But the FDA approval process will take years, maybe decades. These girls could benefit now." "You could lose your medical license," Marcus warned. "These devices work, Marcus," Sarah said with quiet intensity. "I've spent 10 years developing them. They could help thousands of children, not just the Harrison triplets." Before Marcus could respond, Grace skipped into the room, her notebook filled with drawings. She tugged on Sarah's sleeve to show her. "We'll finish this conversation later," Marcus said, his expression troubled. Over the next few days, Sarah created special activities for each girl. For Emma, she organized leadership games where Emma could direct her sisters. For Lily, she set up an art corner with paints and clay. For Grace, she brought simple science experiments that demonstrated vibrations and waves. Robert began spending more time at home, watching the changes in his daughters with growing interest. One evening, he joined them for a game Sarah had created where the girls could feel vibrations through balloons connected to a speaker. "They're laughing," Robert said quietly to Sarah as the girls bounced balloons in the air, feeling the vibrations of music they couldn't hear. "I haven't seen them this happy in months." "They're wonderful children, Mr. Harrison," Sarah replied. "They just need activities that speak to their individual strengths." That night, after putting the girls to bed, Sarah found Robert in his study looking at photographs again. "May I ask about their mother?" Sarah asked gently. Robert was quiet for a moment. Catherine was a musician, a cellist with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. He pointed to a photo of a beautiful woman with flowing red hair holding a cello. When the girls were born deaf, it felt like some cosmic joke. A musician's children who would never hear music. "They can feel music," Sarah said, "through vibrations. That's what we were doing today." Robert looked at her with genuine gratitude. "Thank you for that." Later that night, Sarah met Marcus in the garden behind the house. The spring air was cool and lights from the mansion cast long shadows on the manicured lawn. "I looked into your research," Marcus said. "Your preliminary results at Metasonic were promising." "More than promising," Sarah corrected. "The neural interfaces are far beyond anything currently available. They don't just amplify sound like traditional hearing aids. They create new neural pathways." "And the risks?" Sarah hesitated. "Minimal based on our animal studies, but there's always uncertainty with new technology." Marcus paced along the garden path. "I should report this to Robert." "The girls are thriving with me here," Sarah argued. "You've seen the changes yourself. Just give me time to assess if they're good candidates for the devices. And if they're not, then I'll leave, and no one needs to know why I was really here." Marcus sighed deeply. 2 weeks. I'll give you 2 weeks to make your assessment. Then we talk to Robert together." "Thank you," Sarah said with relief. The next morning, Sarah found Mrs. Collins in the kitchen making phone calls. The housekeeper quickly hung up when Sarah entered. "Good morning, Mrs. Collins," Sarah said cheerfully. "I was just confirming your references," Mrs. Collins replied, her eyes narrowed. "Interesting that your previous employer mentioned you worked with their children for 3 years, but you listed 5 on your resume." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "Perhaps they were confused about the dates." "Perhaps," Mrs. Collins said, unconvinced. "The girls seem to like you, which is the only reason I haven't shared my concerns with Mr. Harrison yet." After Mrs. Collins left, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her hands slightly shaking. Her deception was becoming more complicated by the day. That afternoon, Sarah conducted simple vibration tests with the girls. She placed speakers on the floor and let them feel different types of music through their feet and hands. She carefully noted their reactions in her journal, assessing their sensory responses. Grace was fascinated. Emma was analytical, and Lily was emotional, each responding differently to the same vibrations. These distinct responses convinced Sarah they were excellent candidates for individualized devices. While the girls were at dinner with Robert, Sarah slipped into his home office and accessed their medical records on his computer. She quickly copied files to her laptop, knowing she needed complete information to properly calibrate the devices. As she finished, Robert appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice sharp. Sarah turned, trying to hide her guilt. "I was looking for the girls' schedule for next week. Mrs. Collins mentioned it might be in your files." Robert seemed to accept this explanation. "Next time, please ask me directly." "Of course, I apologize." That night, Sarah modified her devices, looking at photos of the girls and feeling increasingly conflicted. These were children, not test subjects. But if her technology worked, it could change their lives forever. She didn't notice Emma watching through the crack in the door again, her eyes wide as Sarah handled the tiny, mysterious devices. Emma quietly backed away from Sarah's door, her mind full of questions about the strange things the new nanny kept hidden. Why did she have these small devices? What was she writing in her notebook each night? Emma decided to watch Sarah more carefully in the days ahead. The next morning at breakfast, Mrs. Collins answered a phone call in the kitchen. Her face changed as she listened. "I see," she said into the phone. "And you're certain about that? Dr. Sarah Johnson from Medisonic?" She wrote something on a notepad. "Thank you for this information." Mrs. Collins hung up and looked through the doorway at Sarah, who was helping Lily cut her pancakes. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Later that day, Sarah sat with the girls in the garden, teaching them about flowers. She had created special cards for each girl, science facts for Grace, art projects for Lily, and a garden map for Emma to organize. As they worked, Sarah noticed Robert watching from his office window. He had been staying home more often since she arrived. That evening, Sarah was surprised when Robert joined them for dinner. Usually he ate quickly and returned to work, but tonight he stayed at the table. "I canceled my business trip next week," he told Sarah as the girls ate. "I'd like to see more of these activities you're doing with the girls." "Of course," Sarah replied. "They're making wonderful progress." Emma watched this exchange with interest. She nudged Grace and signed, "Dad is staying home more now." Grace nodded and signed back. "Because of Sarah." After dinner, Robert did something unexpected. He took out an old photo album and sat on the couch in the family room. He motioned for the girls and Sarah to join him. "These are pictures of your mother," he signed to the girls, opening to images of Catherine playing the cello. The triplets gathered close, their eyes wide. Sarah realized they had probably rarely seen their father share these memories. "Catherine loved Bach," Robert said, pointing to a concert program in the album. "She played in concert halls across the country. She had the most beautiful red hair." He gently touched Emma's hair, "Just like yours." Lily pointed to a picture of Catherine in a blue dress and signed, "Pretty." "Yes," Robert agreed, "very pretty. She always wore blue for important performances. She said it helped her feel calm." As the girls looked at more photos, Robert glanced at Sarah. "I don't usually... This is difficult for me." "Thank you for sharing her with me," Sarah said softly. "And with them. They need these memories." Later, when the girls were in bed, Robert invited Sarah to his study. "I've noticed real changes in the girls since you arrived," he said, pouring himself a small glass of whiskey. "They seem happier, more engaged." "They're amazing children," Sarah replied. "Each one so unique." "That's what Catherine always said." Robert smiled sadly. "I have a favor to ask. The girls have a school presentation next Friday. I have an important meeting, and Mrs. Collins has a doctor's appointment. Would you represent the family?" Sarah felt a mix of honor and guilt. "I'd be happy to. Thank you." Robert hesitated. It would mean a lot to them. And to me. And the next morning, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. James Peterson. "In Boston for conference, need to meet. Executives asking questions about your leave. Call me as soon as possible." Sarah's heart raced. She hadn't expected Peterson to come to Boston. She texted back, "Very busy with family emergency. Can't meet now." Peterson responded immediately, "Not optional. Medisonic board reviewing your project tomorrow. Need update on your research breakthrough you mentioned before leaving." Sarah's hands shook as she typed, "Will call this afternoon." She put her phone away just as Mrs. Collins entered the kitchen. "Good morning," Sarah said brightly. Mrs. Collins placed a newspaper on the table, folded to show an article about medical innovations. There was a small picture of a woman labeled Dr. Sarah Johnson, Medisonic Researcher. "Interesting reading," Mrs. Collins said. "I like to keep up with medical news. Never know when something might be relevant." Sarah kept her expression calm, though her heart pounded. "Very interesting." "The girls have grown quite attached to you," Mrs. Collins continued. "It would be a shame if something disrupted that attachment." The implied threat hung in the air. "I agree," Sarah said carefully. "Their well-being is my priority." Mrs. Collins nodded slowly. "See that it remains so, Miss Johnson. Or should I say, Doctor?" After Mrs. Collins left, Sarah sat down heavily. Her deception was unraveling faster than she had anticipated. That afternoon, Sarah made an excuse about buying art supplies and drove to a small coffee shop downtown. Dr. Peterson was waiting, his face tight with worry. "What are you really doing in Boston, Sarah?" he demanded as soon as she sat down. "Testing the devices," she admitted. "I found perfect candidates." "Without approval? Without protocols?" Peterson shook his head. "The board is furious. They're talking about legal action if you don't return the prototypes." "They work, James," Sarah said earnestly. "I'm seeing incredible responses to vibration tests. These children are perfect candidates." "Children?" Peterson looked alarmed. "You're testing on children? Have you lost your mind?" "I'm being careful. Gathering data first. I haven't implemented anything yet." "Sarah, come back to New York now. Bring the prototypes. We can start official pediatric trials in a few months." "Months turn into years with FDA approvals," Sarah argued. "These girls need help now." Peterson stood up. "You have until Monday to make the right decision. After that, Medisonic will take action." When Sarah returned to the Harrison home, she found Grace alone in the playroom building a tower of blocks. "Where are your sisters?" Sarah signed. "Emma is organizing books." "Lily is napping," Grace replied. Then she added, "I saw what you keep in your room." Sarah's breath caught. She sat down next to Grace. "What did you see?" "Small things that look like tiny seashells," Grace signed, her eyes bright with curiosity. "And your computer with pictures of ears." Instead of denying it, Sarah made a decision. "You're very observant, Grace. Those are special devices I'm working on." "What do they do?" Grace signed. Sarah hesitated, then began drawing on a piece of paper. She drew a simple ear and sound waves. "Sound is like invisible movement in the air," she explained through signs and drawings. "People with hearing can sense these movements?" Grace watched intently. "Like when we feel vibrations on the balloons?" "Yes, exactly," Sarah nodded. "These small devices might help people feel those movements in a different way." Grace's eyes widened. She pointed to her own ear, then to the drawing. "Would they help me here?" She signed. Sarah took a deep breath. "They might. They're still very new." Grace's hands moved excitedly. "Can I try? Please don't tell Emma and Lily yet. I want to be sure it works first." Sarah knew she was crossing a line, but Grace's eager face made the decision for her. "Tomorrow morning before everyone wakes up, just a short test. It's our secret for now." Grace hugged Sarah tightly, then signed, "I want to hear what Dad sounds like." That night, Sarah prepared a device specifically for Grace. She adjusted settings, checked the battery, and ran diagnostics. As she worked, she heard her phone buzz with another text from Peterson. Board meeting moved up. Decision tomorrow. Last chance. She ignored it. A soft knock at her door startled her. It was Robert. "Sorry to disturb you," he said. "I wanted to give you this." He handed her a small box. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a musical note pendant. It was Catherine's, Robert explained, for the school function. She always wore it when she represented the girls at events. Sarah looked up in surprise. "I can't accept this. Please, it would mean a lot to me. To us." Robert's expression was open, trusting. The weight of her deception pressed down on Sarah as she accepted the necklace. "Thank you. I'm honored." After Robert left, Sarah sat on her bed holding Catherine's necklace in one hand and the hearing device for Grace in the other. Tomorrow would change everything, either beginning a new chapter of possibility for the Harrison family or ending her time with them in disgrace. She placed the necklace carefully on her nightstand and returned to preparing the device for Grace's first test. Dawn light barely filtered through the curtains as Sarah made final adjustments to the tiny device. She had been awake for hours, checking and rechecking settings. This moment could change everything. For Grace, for the Harrison family, and for deaf children everywhere. A soft knock on her door announced Grace's arrival. The little girl entered, still in her blue pajamas decorated with stars. Her red hair was messy from sleep, but her eyes were wide and alert with excitement. "Good morning," Sarah signed. "Did you sleep well?" Grace shook her head and signed back, "Too excited." "Will it hurt?" Sarah knelt down to Grace's level. "No, it shouldn't hurt. If you feel any pain, we'll stop right away." She guided Grace to sit on the edge of the bed and took out her drawings from yesterday. She used them to explain each step of the process. "This device sits here," Sarah signed, pointing to the area just behind Grace's ear. "It's very small. You might feel a light touch, but that's all." Grace nodded bravely. "I'm ready." Sarah carefully parted Grace's hair and positioned the device. It was smaller than a pea, nearly invisible once in place. The neural connectors were designed to rest against the skin without breaking it, a revolutionary advancement in hearing technology. "Now I'll turn it on using this," Sarah signed, showing Grace a small remote control. "Remember, you might not notice anything right away. That's okay." Grace sat perfectly still, her hands gripping the edge of the bed. Sarah pressed the activation button. Nothing changed in Grace's expression. She looked at Sarah and signed, "Did it start?" Sarah nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Yes. Do you feel anything different?" Grace shook her head, her face falling. "No, I don't think it's working." Sarah's heart sank. She had been so certain the device would work. She checked the remote. The green light indicated it was functioning correctly. "Let's give it a minute," Sarah signed, though she felt her hopes fading. Then something changed in Grace's expression. Her eyes widened slightly. Her head tilted. She turned slowly toward Sarah's bedside table where an old-fashioned alarm clock sat. "What is that?" Grace signed, her hands trembling slightly. "There's something I can feel, but not with my hands." Sarah's heart leapt. "That's the clock. It makes a sound called ticking." Grace's entire body became still as she concentrated. "Tick, tick, tick," she signed, matching the rhythm perfectly. "Yes!" Sarah signed, trying to contain her excitement. "You're hearing it, Grace! You're hearing the clock!" Grace's face transformed with a mix of wonder, confusion, and fear. She suddenly covered her ears with her hands, her eyes growing wider. "Too much!" she signed frantically when she lowered her hands. "Too many things at once!" Sarah quickly adjusted the volume on the remote, lowering it to the minimum setting. "Better now." Grace nodded slowly, her breathing calming. "What was all that?" "Sounds are everywhere," Sarah explained. "The clock, the birds outside, the air system in the house. Your brain isn't used to processing them yet." For the next 15 minutes, Sarah guided Grace through this new experience. She made different sounds, snapping her fingers, tapping the desk, rustling paper, helping Grace identify each one. Grace pointed to the window where early morning birds were active. "Those little things make big feelings in my ears." "Those are birds singing," Sarah signed, smiling. "Do you like it?" Grace nodded slowly. "It's strange, but nice." The device beeped softly, and Sarah checked the remote. "The battery is getting low. We need to stop for today." "No," Grace signed desperately. "A little longer. The battery needs to recharge and your brain needs time to rest," Sarah explained gently. "We can try again tomorrow." With obvious reluctance, Grace sat still while Sarah removed the device. As soon as it was off, Grace's expression changed, a return to her familiar world of silence. "I want to tell Emma and Lily," she signed excitedly. Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. We need more tests to make sure it works properly. This is very new technology." But they would want to hear too," Grace insisted. "Soon," Sarah promised. "Let's make sure it's working perfectly for you first." At breakfast, Robert noticed something different about Grace. She kept tilting her head at odd moments, as if listening for something. "Is everything okay, Grace?" He signed. Grace nodded quickly, perhaps too quickly. She exchanged a secret look with Sarah. "She's just tired," Sarah explained. "She didn't sleep well." Later that morning, Mrs. Collins was cleaning the girl's bedroom when she found something strange under Grace's pillow. A tiny metallic component no bigger than a grain of rice. She studied it carefully before slipping it into her pocket. During lunch, she approached Sarah in the kitchen. "I found this in Grace's room," Mrs. Collins said, holding out the component. "It looks like part of those hearing devices in that article I showed you. The ones Dr. Sarah Johnson is developing at Medisonic." Sarah's stomach tightened. "I don't know what that is. Perhaps part of one of Grace's experiments?" Mrs. Collins placed the component on the counter. "I care about those girls, Ms. Johnson, or Dr. Johnson, whichever it is. If you're using them for experiments without their father's knowledge, there will be consequences." After Mrs. Collins left, Sarah examined the component with alarm. It was a backup battery for the device. Grace must have taken it from her room. The situation was becoming more complicated by the hour. The next morning, before anyone else was awake, Grace appeared at Sarah's door again. "Ready for our second test?" Sarah signed. Grace nodded eagerly. This time, Sarah had refined the settings based on Grace's initial reactions. She placed the device carefully, then activated it at a lower volume setting. Grace's reaction was immediate. A smile spread across her face as the sounds of morning gently reached her. "I can hear the clock again," she signed. "And something else, a low sound." "That's the heating system," Sarah explained. "Each sound has a name and a source." Then Sarah did something she hadn't planned. She spoke out loud, softly. "Hello, Grace." Grace's eyes filled with tears. Her hands moved slowly. Was that my name? With your voice?" Sarah nodded, her own eyes growing wet. "Yes, that was me saying your name." "Say it again," Grace signed urgently. "Hello, Grace," Sarah repeated aloud. "My name is Sarah." Grace touched her own throat, then pointed to Sarah's. "Will I make sounds with this too?" "With practice, yes," Sarah signed. "It takes time to learn." Grace's face shone with determination. "I want to say Dad when he comes home today." That afternoon, Dr. Marcus arrived for the girls' regular checkup. He examined each girl carefully, starting with Emma and Lily. When he got to Grace, he noticed something different in her responses to his standard tests. "Grace, can you follow my finger with your eyes?" he asked, signing simultaneously. Grace not only followed his finger but turned her head when he snapped his fingers behind her, a response she had never shown before. After the examination, Marcus pulled Sarah into the hallway. "What did you do?" he asked in a low voice. "Grace is responding to auditory stimuli." Sarah glanced around to make sure they were alone. I tested the device on her yesterday. It works, Marcus. She can hear. You actually did it? His expression was a mix of shock and concern. Without any approval? Come to my room. I'll show you the data. In Sarah's room, she pulled out her laptop and showed Marcus the readings from Grace's sessions. See these neural pathways activating? The device is creating new connections her brain never had before. Marcus studied the screens, his expression changing from concern to amazement. This is remarkable. These readings are better than anything I've seen in current hearing technology. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone, Sarah said. These devices could revolutionize treatment for deaf children. No more waiting years for technology to make it through bureaucratic approvals. But the risks, Sarah, are minimal compared to the potential benefits, she insisted. You've seen Grace today. Tell me that's not worth it. Before Marcus could respond, a small figure appeared in the doorway. Emma stood watching them, her eyes moving from the laptop screen to the small device on Sarah's desk. Is that what helps Grace hear? Emma signed, her expression unreadable. I saw her listening this morning. She didn't tell me, but I knew. Sarah and Marcus exchanged alarmed looks. Emma, Sarah signed carefully. How long have you been standing there? Long enough, Emma signed back. Her next signs were direct and determined. I want to be next. Sarah and Marcus exchanged worried glances as Emma stood firmly in the doorway, her hands still shaped in her last signs. I want to be next. Emma, this is complicated, Sarah signed, moving toward the little girl. Is Grace really hearing things? Emma demanded, her eyes serious. Real sounds? Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Yes. We tried a special device that helps her hear some sounds. Then I want to try it too, Emma signed, her movements sharp and determined. I'm the oldest. I should go first, not Grace. Dr. Marcus knelt down to Emma's level. Emma, this technology is very new. We need to be careful. Emma pointed to the laptop screen. Those are pictures of Grace's brain, right? I want to see my brain do that too. Sarah realized she couldn't hide the truth from Emma anymore. And if Emma knew, Lily would soon find out as well. She needed to talk to Robert. Emma, I promise you'll get your turn, Sarah signed. But first I need to speak with your father about this. It's important, he knows. Emma's expression remained serious. Today. I want to try it today. After Emma left, Marcus shook his head. You've opened Pandora's box, Sarah. I know, Sarah admitted, but there's no going back now. Will you help me explain this to Robert? That evening, after the girls were in bed, Sarah and Marcus sat with Robert in his study. Sarah had prepared a careful explanation, revealing parts of the truth while still protecting her full identity. Mr. Harrison, she began, I need to tell you something important about my background. Before becoming a nanny, I worked with researchers developing new hearing technology. Robert leaned forward, his expression cautious. Go on. I have access to experimental devices, neural hearing aids that are more advanced than anything currently available. Sarah glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. I've been assessing if the girls would be good candidates for these devices. You've been evaluating my daughters without telling me? Robert's voice sharpened. Yes, and I apologize for that, Sarah said. I wanted to be certain before giving you hope that might not be justified. These devices, Robert said slowly. What exactly do they do? Marcus stepped in, using his medical authority to lend credibility. They create neural pathways that traditional hearing aids can't achieve. I've reviewed the technology, Robert. It's groundbreaking. Have you tested these devices on my daughters? Robert asked directly. Sarah took a deep breath. Yes, on Grace. Yesterday morning and again today. Robert stood up abruptly. Without my permission? It was wrong, I know that, Sarah admitted. But the results are remarkable. Grace can hear sounds, the clock ticking, birds singing, voices. Robert sat back down, his anger visibly warring with hope. "Grace can hear?" "Actually hear?" "Yes," Sarah said softly. "She heard my voice say her name today." Robert's eyes filled with tears. He looked between Sarah and Marcus. "Is this real? Not some cruel experiment?" "It's real," Marcus assured him. "I examined Grace today. She responded to auditory stimuli she's never responded to before." Robert ran his hands through his hair, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? These are my daughters. The technology is still experimental," Sarah explained. "Not yet FDA approved. I'm connected with the research team, but using the devices outside official trials is complicated." "Is it dangerous?" Robert asked immediately. "The risks are minimal based on all our testing," Sarah assured him. "But there are no guarantees with new technology." Robert was silent for a long moment. "And now Emma wants to try it too?" "Yes, she discovered what we were doing with Grace," Sarah said. "What about Lily?" Robert asked. "She doesn't know yet," Sarah replied. "Each child will respond differently. Emma and Grace are more adventurous. Lily might need more time." Robert stood and walked to the window, staring out at the night. When he turned back, his expression had changed. "Let me meet with Grace first. I want to see for myself." The next morning, Robert sat alone with Grace in his study. Sarah had placed the device and activated it before leaving them together. "Grace," Robert said aloud, not signing for the first time. "Can you hear me?" Grace's eyes widened. She nodded vigorously and signed, "Your voice is deeper than Sarah's." Robert's hands trembled as he spoke again. "I've waited 8 years to have you hear my voice, sweetheart." Grace pointed to her ear, then signed, "I want to make sounds too. Teach me how to say, Dad." Over the next hour, Robert helped Grace form her first spoken word. Her attempts were unclear, duh and da, but Robert thought they were the most beautiful sounds in the world. When they emerged from the study, Robert's face was streaked with tears of joy. He found Sarah in the kitchen. "Emma can try the device," he said firmly, "and Lily too when she's ready." Sarah nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you for understanding." "I don't fully understand yet," Robert admitted, "but I can't deny my daughter the chance to hear." Emma's testing session was scheduled for that afternoon. Unlike Grace's wonder and fear, Emma approached the experience with analytical precision. "Will it hurt?" She signed before Sarah placed the device. "No, it shouldn't," Sarah assured her. "How does it work?" Emma asked. Sarah explained in simple terms how the device created connections between Emma's ears and brain. Emma nodded seriously, processing the information. When Sarah activated the device, Emma didn't react immediately. She sat perfectly still, her eyes focused straight ahead. "Emma?" Sarah signed. "Can you hear anything?" Emma held up her hand, requesting silence. She was concentrating intensely. Finally, she signed, "Different sounds have different feelings. The clock is regular. The wind outside is changing. Your breathing is soft." Sarah was amazed by Emma's detailed observations. While Grace had responded emotionally, Emma was cataloging and analyzing every sound. Then Robert entered the room and spoke. "Hello, Emma." Emma's composure broke. Her eyes filled with tears as she turned toward her father's voice. She signed with shaking hands. "That's Dad." "I know it is." "Yes," Sarah signed, her own eyes wet. "That's your father's voice." Emma reached for Robert, who gathered her in his arms. "I can hear you," she signed against his chest. "I love you, Emma," Robert said aloud, holding his daughter close. While Emma and Grace were embracing their new abilities, Lily began to withdraw. She noticed her sisters reacting to things she couldn't perceive. At dinner, both Emma and Grace would turn toward sounds in the kitchen. They shared secret smiles when their devices were activated. Lily approached Sarah in the art corner the next day, her eyes sad. "Emma and Grace are different now," she signed. "They know something I don't." Sarah's heart ached for Lily. "They're experiencing something new," she signed. "But that doesn't change how much they love you." "I don't want the thing in my ear," Lily signed firmly. "It scares me." "That's okay," Sarah assured her. "You don't have to try it until you're ready. Maybe never, if that's what you want." Sarah had anticipated Lily's reluctance. Instead of pushing the hearing device, she developed a different approach. She created colorful cards representing different sounds and taught Lily to recognize when Emma and Grace were hearing specific things. "When they look up quickly, it might be this sound," she explained, showing a card with a doorbell illustration. "When they look toward the window, it might be this one," she showed birds on a branch. Lily studied the cards carefully, creating her own system to understand her sister's new world. With Robert's permission, Sarah began refining each girl's device. Emma's was programmed for greater clarity of speech, while Grace's emphasized musical tones. The changes in the Harrison household were remarkable. Robert brought out Catherine's old record collection, playing classical music that Grace particularly enjoyed. "Catherine would have loved this," Robert told Sarah one evening as they watched Grace moving to Beethoven's music. "Her greatest sadness was thinking the girls would never experience music." Mrs. Collins observed these changes with mixed emotions. She had found more evidence of Sarah's true identity: a medical journal with Sarah's research paper on neural hearing technology. But seeing the joy in the household made her hesitate to expose Sarah completely. One evening she approached Sarah directly. "I know exactly who you are, Dr. Johnson," Mrs. Collins said quietly. "And I should tell Mr. Harrison everything." Sarah tensed. "Why haven't you?" "Because those little girls are happier than they've been since their mother died," Mrs. Collins admitted. "But don't mistake my silence for approval. If anything happens to those children because of your devices, there will be consequences." The most significant moment came when all three girls wore their devices simultaneously for the first time, including Lily, who had finally agreed to try after seeing her sister's experiences. Robert had arranged a special dinner with all of Catherine's favorite foods. As they sat around the table, Grace suddenly spoke aloud. "Dad." The word was unclear but recognizable. Robert froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Emma joined in, carefully forming, "Dad." Then to everyone's surprise, Lily spoke too. "Dad." Their voices were different. Grace's enthusiastic, Emma's precise, Lily's soft. But together they created a harmony that filled the room with joy. Robert looked at Sarah across the table, his eyes expressing gratitude beyond words. In that moment, Sarah felt both triumph and fear. Her devices had succeeded beyond her expectations, but the precarious foundation of deception beneath her success seemed increasingly unstable. That night, as Sarah was updating her research notes, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a business news alert. Harrison Technologies considering groundbreaking partnership with medical device company Medisonic. Sarah stared at the screen in horror. Her two worlds were about to collide. Sarah stared at her phone in shock. Harrison Technologies and Medisonic potentially becoming business partners. She immediately called Dr. Marcus. "Have you seen the business news?" she asked when he answered. "Just now," Marcus replied, his voice tense. "This complicates everything. If Robert meets with Medisonic executives, they'll recognize my technology immediately," Sarah finished. "And Dr. Peterson already knows I'm in Boston." "You need to tell Robert the full truth," Marcus advised, "before he finds out from someone else." Sarah ended the call and sat on the edge of her bed, Catherine's necklace glinting on her nightstand. She had crossed so many lines already. How could she explain that she wasn't just connected to the research? She was the lead researcher who had taken experimental devices without permission. The next morning, Robert was preparing for an important meeting downtown. "I'll be at Harrison Technologies headquarters all day," he told Sarah while the girls ate breakfast. "Board meeting about a potential partnership." "With Medisonic?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Robert looked surprised. Yes, actually. Their neural technology division has some interesting innovations we might integrate with our accessibility software. He checked his watch. I should get going. The Metasonic team is flying in from New York. After Robert left, Sarah focused on working with the girls. Each one showed different progress with their devices. Emma was methodically learning words, creating lists of sounds and their meanings. Grace was fascinated by music, spending hours with Catherine's old records. Lily, still hesitant, preferred keeping her device at the lowest setting, primarily using it to hear her sister's and father's voices. Today we'll try something new, Sarah told them, signing and speaking simultaneously. This dual communication had become standard in the household. She brought out 3 small recorders. I want each of you to practice speaking into these. Then we can play it back so you can hear your own voices. Emma approached the task with determination. My name is Emma Harrison, she said carefully into the recorder, then played it back repeatedly, adjusting her pronunciation each time. Grace treated it like a game, recording singing sounds and giggles, delighted by her own voice. Lily recorded just one word, Dad, and smiled shyly when she played it back. Meanwhile, Robert sat at the head of the conference table in Harrison Technologies' downtown office. Across from him, Dr. James Peterson was presenting Metasonic's latest neural hearing technology. Our neural interfaces represent the next generation in assistive hearing devices, Peterson explained, showing slides of the technology. They don't just amplify sound, they create new pathways in the brain. Robert studied the images with growing interest. These look remarkably sophisticated. What's your timeline for bringing them to market? We're still in the clinical trial phase, Peterson admitted. FDA approval is likely 2 to 3 years away at minimum. Robert frowned. That long? The technology seems ready now. There are regulatory hurdles, Peterson explained. Our lead researcher was making excellent progress, but he hesitated. But what? Robert prompted. Dr. Johnson took an unexpected leave of absence several weeks ago, Peterson said. It slowed our progress considerably. Robert leaned forward. Dr. Johnson? What's their first name? Sarah, Peterson replied. Dr. Sarah Johnson, brilliant researcher, but recently her behavior has been unpredictable. Robert kept his expression neutral, but his mind was racing. Could it be coincidence? Sarah, their nanny, connected to hearing technology research? That's unfortunate, Robert said carefully. Actually, I've seen some promising results recently with experimental hearing technology. Peterson's interest sharpened. Oh? Through one of our competitors? No, nothing like that, Robert said. A more personal matter. My daughters are deaf, and they've been trying some new devices with remarkable results. Peterson's eyes widened. Your daughters? What kind of devices exactly? Neural interfaces of some kind, Robert said vaguely. I'm not familiar with all the technical details. Peterson pulled out his phone. Would you mind if I showed you a photo? It might help us understand if we're talking about similar technology. He displayed a photo of a small device that looked identical to the ones Sarah had placed on his daughter's ears. Robert's heart began to pound. Yes, that looks very similar. Peterson's face darkened. Mr. Harrison, I believe we need to have a very specific conversation about these devices and who provided them to your family. Back at the Harrison home, Sarah was helping the girls prepare for their school talent show. They had decided to perform a dance routine to one of Catherine's favorite classical pieces. When we move our arms like this, Sarah demonstrated, it matches the music in this part. The girls copied her movements, giggling when they made mistakes. Even Lily was fully participating, her initial fear giving way to excitement. Mrs. Collins watched from the doorway, her expression softening at the girls' joy. After they finished practicing, she asked Sarah to join her in the kitchen. I found this yesterday, Mrs. Collins said, placing a medical journal on the table. It was open to an article featuring a photo of Sarah presenting her research at a conference. The headline read, "Dr. Sarah Johnson's neural hearing technology promises breakthrough for deaf patients." "I should tell Mr. Harrison everything," Mrs. Collins said. "But I've seen how happy the girls are now. How they're flourishing." She paused. Catherine would have wanted them to have this chance. Sarah looked at her with surprise. "You knew Catherine well?" Mrs. Collins nodded. "I was with her through her entire pregnancy." "Did you know she researched hearing technologies while she was expecting? She worried about hereditary hearing loss in her family." "I didn't know that," Sarah said quietly. "She would have moved heaven and earth to help her daughters here," Mrs. Collins continued. "So I'm keeping your secret for now, Dr. Johnson. But this deception can't continue forever." Later that afternoon, Dr. Marcus called Sarah with alarming news. "Medisonic executives are asking questions about technology matching your prototypes," he warned. "They're specifically inquiring about pediatric applications in the Boston area." "How much time do I have before they make the connection?" Sarah asked. "Not much," Marcus replied. "Days, maybe hours if Peterson recognized the description of your devices." Sarah looked out the window at the girls practicing their dance in the garden. They moved in perfect unison now, able to hear the music together for the first time in their lives. "I need to tell Robert tonight," she decided. "Everything." Before she could plan what to say, the front doorbell rang. Mrs. Collins answered it, then came to find Sarah with a panicked expression. "It's Dr. Peterson from Medisonic," she whispered urgently. "He's in the foyer with Mr. Harrison. They're asking for you." Sarah's blood ran cold. "The girls are still in the garden," Mrs. Collins assured her. "I'll keep them there." Sarah heard Robert's voice from the entryway. "Sarah, could you join us, please?" She took a deep breath and stepped into the hallway, but stopped when she heard Peterson speaking. "I'm telling you, Robert, this is outrageous. Dr. Johnson stole proprietary technology worth millions of dollars. She's been testing experimental devices on children, your children, without proper protocols or oversight." Sarah backed into the kitchen, her heart pounding. She could hear Robert defending her. There must be some explanation. "The Sarah I know would never endanger my daughters." "The Sarah you know is a fiction," Peterson replied angrily. "Dr. Sarah Johnson is a brilliant researcher who's apparently gone rogue with technology that doesn't belong to her." Sarah looked around frantically. She couldn't face them now. Not like this. Not before she had a chance to explain everything to Robert herself. She slipped out the back door and circled around to the garden where the girls were still practicing. "Let's go inside for a snack," she signed to them, leading them through the side entrance and up the back stairs to their playroom. Once the girls were settled with their favorite books, Sarah went to her room and began frantically gathering her research data. She needed to prove the devices were safe and effective. She needed to show Robert that despite her deception, she had helped his daughters. As she compiled her evidence, Sarah noticed dark clouds gathering outside. The weather forecast had mentioned a thunderstorm approaching Boston that evening. She paused, struck by a sudden idea. A storm would create powerful sounds, dramatic, unmistakable sounds that the girls had never experienced before. If Robert was going to discover her true identity today, she wanted him to see undeniable proof of her technology's success first. The thunderstorm would provide the perfect demonstration. Sarah grabbed her tablet containing all her research data and the remote controls for each girl's device. She adjusted the settings to optimal levels for processing complex sounds like thunder. Then she went to find the girls. It was time for them to experience one of nature's most powerful symphonies, and for Sarah to face the consequences of her actions. The dark clouds rolled over Boston as Sarah hurried to the girls' playroom. The first distant rumble of thunder made the windows vibrate slightly. Sarah found Emma, Lily, and Grace reading books, all wearing their hearing devices. "Girls," Sarah signed and spoke simultaneously, "something special is about to happen. A storm is coming." Emma looked up with interest. A storm? What does that mean? Sarah smiled. It means you're about to hear one of nature's most powerful sounds. Come to the window. The girls followed Sarah to the large bay window that overlooked the garden. Outside, the sky had turned a deep gray. Trees swayed in the strengthening wind. I've adjusted your devices to help you experience the storm clearly, Sarah explained, making small modifications to each girl's remote control. Tell me what you hear. For several minutes, nothing happened. The girls watched the trees moving, but the thunder remained distant. Then suddenly, a bright flash lit up the sky. What was that? Grace signed excitedly. Lightning, Sarah answered. Now wait. 3 seconds later, a deep rumble rolled across the sky. The girls' reactions were immediate and powerful. Instead of fear, their faces showed amazement. Emma's eyes widened. Lily's mouth formed a perfect O. Grace reached toward the window. I feel it, Grace said aloud, her voice unclear but her excitement unmistakable. Inside my head. That's thunder, Sarah explained, both signing and speaking. It's the sound that comes after lightning. Another flash came, brighter and closer. The thunder that followed was louder, a rolling boom that seemed to shake the house itself. The girls didn't cover their ears or hide. Instead, they moved closer to the window, captivated by this new experience. It's like… Emma searched for words. Like when we feel the big drums at school, but bigger. More! Lily signed enthusiastically. This was unusual for her, as she typically approached new experiences with caution. Sarah's heart filled with joy at their reactions. This was why she had taken such risks for moments like this. Come with me, Sarah said. I want to show you something even more special. She led the girls to Robert's study, a room with an expensive sound system he rarely used. Sarah connected her tablet to the speakers. There was a famous composer, a person who creates music named Beethoven, Sarah explained. He was deaf, like you. But he wrote some of the most beautiful music ever created. How could he write music if he couldn't hear? Emma asked skeptically. He became deaf later in life, so he remembered sounds, Sarah explained, and he could feel music through vibrations just like you always have. But his greatest work, many people believe, was created after he lost his hearing completely. Sarah tapped her tablet screen. This is called Ode to Joy. The powerful opening notes of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony filled the room. Sarah turned up the volume so the girls could feel the vibrations through the floor. At first, the triplets stood still, processing this new experience. Grace began moving first, swaying to the rhythm. Emma studied the changing sounds with intense concentration. Lily closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. As the famous melody built, all three girls began moving instinctively. They held hands, creating their own dance. Grace laughed out loud, a clear, joyful sound that Sarah had never heard before. Emma joined in, their movements becoming more coordinated as they responded to the music. Sarah was so absorbed in watching the girls that she didn't hear the study door open. What in God's name? Robert's voice came from behind her. Sarah turned to see Robert standing in the doorway, Dr. Peterson just behind him. Their faces showed complete shock at the scene before them. 3 deaf girls dancing to music they could clearly hear. The thunderstorm chose that moment to unleash its full power. A tremendous lightning flash was followed immediately by a window-rattling boom. The girls turned toward the sound, unafraid, then continued their dance on Robert's desk, using the polished surface as a stage. Dr. Johnson, Peterson said coldly, stepping into the room, I see you've been busy with our technology. The girls noticed the newcomers but didn't stop dancing. The joy on their faces was too pure to be interrupted. Robert, Sarah began, her voice trembling. I can explain. You're actually Dr. Sarah Johnson, Robert said. His voice was surprisingly calm, the lead researcher from Metasonic. Yes, Sarah admitted. I am. You lied about everything, Robert continued. Your background, your experience, your intentions with my daughters. Not everything, Sarah insisted. I never lied about wanting to help them. Peterson moved forward angrily. Help them? You've turned them into unauthorized test subjects. Those devices haven't been approved for human trials, let alone children. The music reached its crescendo, and the girls' dance became more enthusiastic. They were oblivious to the tension among the adults, lost in their new world of sound. Look at them, Robert, Sarah pleaded. They can hear. They can experience music. Your wife's music. Robert's eyes filled with tears as he watched his daughters. For 8 years, he had dreamed of this moment. Despite his anger at Sarah's deception, he couldn't deny the miracle happening before him. The devices must be returned immediately, Peterson demanded. Medisonic will pursue criminal charges for theft of intellectual property worth millions of dollars. Criminal charges? Robert turned to Peterson in surprise. She stole proprietary technology and disappeared, Peterson explained. We've been searching for her for weeks. Grace jumped down from the desk and approached Robert. She looked up at him with determination on her small face. Then, with careful concentration, she spoke a single word. Dad. The room went completely silent. Even the thunder seemed to pause. The word wasn't perfectly clear, but it was unmistakable. Robert fell to his knees, his anger forgotten as he gathered Grace in his arms. Did you hear that? He asked Peterson, tears streaming down his face. My daughter just called me Dad. For the first time in her life. Emma and Lily joined them, each saying Dad in their own unique voices. Robert held all 3 girls, overwhelmed with emotion. Peterson looked uncomfortable. Mr. Harrison, I understand this is an emotional moment, but the legal issues remain. That technology belongs to Medisonic. Robert stood up, his expression changing from emotional to determined. Let's discuss this logically, Dr. Peterson. Your company has revolutionary technology that works, but is years away from market. My company has the distribution network and accessibility expertise to bring it to the world now. What are you suggesting? Peterson asked cautiously. A partnership, Robert replied. Harrison Technologies and Medisonic, working together to make this technology available to every child who needs it. It's not that simple, Peterson protested. There are protocols, clinical trials, which can be expedited with the right resources, Robert countered. Resources my company has in abundance. While the men discussed possibilities, Mrs. Collins entered the room. She had been watching from the doorway. Perhaps, she suggested, you could continue this conversation in the dining room. The girls should continue their music lesson with Dr. Johnson. Robert looked at Sarah, his expression complex, hurt, grateful, confused. Yes, let's continue elsewhere. Sarah, stay with the girls. As the men followed Mrs. Collins out, Robert paused at the door. This discussion isn't over, Sarah. But what you've given my daughters, I can't ignore that. Left alone with the triplets, Sarah exhaled slowly. The storm continued outside, but the worst had passed. The girls looked at her expectantly. More music? Grace asked aloud, her pronunciation imperfect but understandable. Sarah smiled through her tears. Yes, more music. She selected another piece from Catherine's collection, a Mozart piano concerto. As the gentle notes filled the room, the girls began a slower, more deliberate dance. Their movements were no longer random responses to vibrations, but purposeful expressions of the music they could now hear. Through the window, Sarah saw Robert and Peterson walking in the garden, deep in conversation. Their gestures suggested intense negotiation, but they were talking, not arguing. The thunder rumbled again, softer now, more distant. The storm was moving away from Boston, but its impact would remain forever in this household. Sarah watched the triplets dancing, knowing that regardless of what happened to her, Whether she faced legal consequences or professional disgrace, this moment made everything worthwhile. She had brought sound to a silent world, and no one could take that away. The morning after the thunderstorm, breakfast at the Harrison home was unusually quiet. Robert sat at one end of the table, the girls in their usual places, and Sarah at the other end. The silence wasn't because the girls couldn't hear. It was the heavy silence of unspoken tensions. "Blue cup, please," Lily signed and spoke simultaneously, pointing to her yellow cup. This small return to routine seemed to comfort her. Sarah quickly exchanged it, avoiding Robert's eyes. Since her true identity had been revealed yesterday, Robert had been polite but distant. They hadn't had a proper conversation about what happened. "Girls, Ms. Sarah and I need to talk today," Robert said and signed. "Mrs. Collins will take you to the park after breakfast." Emma looked between her father and Sarah with concern. "Are you going to make Sarah leave?" She signed directly. Robert sighed. "We have many things to discuss. Adult things." "But she helps us here," Grace protested aloud, her speech still unclear but improving daily. "No one is taking away your devices," Robert assured them. "That's not what this is about." After the girls left with Mrs. Collins, Robert and Sarah sat in his study. The same room where, just yesterday, the girls had danced to Beethoven while a thunderstorm raged outside. "I spoke with Dr. Peterson until very late last night," Robert began. "He's still angry, but I think I've convinced him that legal action isn't in anyone's best interest." "Thank you," Sarah said quietly. "I didn't do it for you," Robert replied, his voice hardening. "I did it for my daughters." Sarah nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" Robert leaned forward. "You entered my home under false pretenses. You experimented on my children without proper authorization. You risked their health and safety." "The devices are safe," Sarah insisted. "All our animal trials aren't human trials," Robert cut in, "and certainly not trials on children." Sarah looked down at her hands. "I know what I did was wrong from a procedural standpoint, but the FDA approval process would have taken years. Your daughters would have been teenagers before they could benefit from this technology." "That wasn't your decision to make," Robert said firmly. "You're right," Sarah admitted. "It wasn't. And I'm sorry for the deception. But I'm not sorry for what the girls have gained." Robert was quiet for a long moment. "Neither am I," he finally said. "Watching them here for the first time, hearing them say, 'Dad.'" His voice broke slightly. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "That depends," Robert replied. "Dr. Peterson is flying back to New York today to present our partnership proposal to Medisonic's board. If they accept, we'll establish a formal research program combining their technology with Harrison Technologies' resources." "And if they don't accept?" Sarah asked. "Then things get complicated," Robert admitted. "They could still pursue charges against you." Sarah nodded, absorbing this information. "And my role here? That's what we need to discuss," Robert said. "The girls have bonded with you. Removing you from their lives completely would be traumatic, but I'm not sure I can trust you anymore." "I understand," Sarah said. "Perhaps it would be best if I—" She was interrupted by Robert's phone ringing. He glanced at it. "I need to take this. It's my legal team." After Robert left to take the call, Sarah remained in the study, looking at the family photographs on the walls. Catherine's smiling face seemed to watch her from every angle. Later that morning, Sarah met with her own attorney, a woman named Diane Miller who specialized in intellectual property law. "The situation is serious, Sarah," Diane said bluntly. "Medisonic could pursue criminal charges for theft of intellectual property. The devices are worth millions of dollars." "But they work," Sarah argued. "The triplets can hear." "Isn't that what matters?" "To you, yes. To a corporate legal team, no," Diane replied. "The best-case scenario is that this Harrison-Medisonic partnership goes through. That would likely include an agreement not to pursue charges against you. "And the worst case?" Sarah asked. "Criminal charges, loss of your medical license, possibly jail time," Diane said honestly. "Taking experimental medical devices and using them on children without proper protocols or parental informed consent. Sarah, what were you thinking?" Sarah didn't have a good answer. The legal risks had seemed abstract compared to the potential benefits for the girls. When Sarah returned to the Harrison home, she found Robert meeting with a group of audiologists in the living room. The triplets sat on a nearby couch, watching curiously. "Ah, Sarah," Robert said formally. "These are specialists from Boston Children's Hospital. They're evaluating the girls' progress with the devices." A woman in a white coat approached Sarah. "Dr. Johnson?" "I'm Dr. Rivera. Your work is remarkable. The neural pathways these devices have created in such a short time, I've never seen anything like it." "Thank you," Sarah said, surprised by the professional acknowledgement. Dr. Rivera continued, "The girls show unique patterns of adaptation. Emma processes language most efficiently, Grace shows exceptional response to musical tones, and Lily has the most acute sensitivity to emotional voice inflections." Robert joined them. The specialists confirmed the devices are functioning safely. They're creating actual neural connections, not just amplifying sound. "That was always the goal," Sarah explained. "To create new pathways, not just enhance existing ones." After the specialists left, the girls approached Sarah eagerly. "We have practice for the talent show," Emma reminded her, using both sign language and speech. "Will you help us?" Sarah looked at Robert questioningly. "Yes, Sarah will help you," Robert said. "Your performance is in 2 weeks, you should keep preparing." During rehearsal in the family room, Lily suddenly froze when Sarah asked her to practice her solo movement. "I can't do it," Lily signed, her face showing panic. "Everyone will look at me." Sarah knelt beside her. "It's okay to be nervous about performing." "What if I make a mistake?" Lily signed frantically. "What if I can't hear the music right?" Robert, who had been watching from the doorway, approached and sat next to Lily. "Did you know your mother had stage fright?" he asked, signing and speaking. Lily looked surprised. "Mom was afraid too?" Robert nodded. "Before every concert, she would get very nervous. She told me once that her hands would shake so badly she could barely hold her cello bow." "What did she do?" Lily asked. "She closed her eyes and played the music in her head first," Robert explained. "Then when she started playing for real, she focused on just one person in the audience, me." Lily considered this. "Can I focus on you during our dance?" "I'll be in the front row," Robert promised. Lily smiled and stood up, ready to try her solo again. Sarah watched this exchange with a mixture of emotions. It was beautiful to see Robert connecting with his daughter, but it also highlighted how she herself was an outsider in this family. That evening, Sarah began quietly packing her belongings in her room. The legal uncertainties, Robert's lingering distrust, and her own guilt were all pointing toward the same conclusion. She should leave the Harrison family. The girls had their devices now. They would continue to progress without her. As she folded a sweater, Sarah found drawings tucked into her dresser drawer, one from each triplet. Emma had drawn their family standing in front of the house. Grace had created a picture of all of them dancing to music, and Lily had drawn a rainbow over the family, with musical notes floating in the air. In each picture, Sarah stood with the family, not separate, not outside, but included as if she belonged. Sarah sat on her bed holding the drawings, tears filling her eyes. How could she leave them now? But how could she stay with all the complications her presence created? She was still considering this when she heard a knock. Robert stood in her doorway, looking at her half-packed suitcase. "You're leaving," he said. It wasn't a question. "I thought it might be best," Sarah replied. "For everyone." Robert entered the room and noticed the drawings in her hand. "The girls drew those for you?" Sarah nodded. "They see me as part of the family. But we both know I'm not." Robert was quiet for a moment, then said, "I just got off the phone with Metasonic's CEO. They're accepting our partnership proposal with conditions." "What conditions?" Sarah asked. "They want oversight of all future development of the technology," Robert explained, "and they want you to lead the research team under their supervision." Sarah looked up in surprise. "They're not pressing charges?" "The partnership agreement includes a non-prosecution clause," Robert said. "They're more interested in the success of the technology than punishing you for unconventional methods." "I don't know what to say," Sarah admitted. Robert gestured to her suitcase. "So you don't need to leave because of legal concerns." "But if you want to leave for other reasons, I never wanted to hurt you or the girls," Sarah said. "I believed so strongly that this technology could help them that I justified all the deception to myself." "I understand that now," Robert said, "and despite everything, I'm grateful for what you've given my daughters." Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang with an urgent call from the triplets' school. "Miss Johnson? This is Principal Watson. There's been an accident during talent show rehearsal. Lily fell from the stage. She's okay, just a twisted ankle, but she's very upset. She's asking for you and Mr. Harrison." "We'll be right there," Sarah said, hanging up and turning to Robert. "Lily had an accident at school. She's asking for both of us." As they rushed to the car, Robert paused. "We'll finish our conversation later. Right now, our girls need us." Our girls, Sarah thought. Despite everything, he had said our girls. Robert drove quickly through the Boston streets while Sarah sat anxiously beside him. Neither spoke about their interrupted conversation. Their focus was completely on Lily. When they arrived at the school, they found Emma and Grace sitting outside the nurse's office, their faces worried. "Where is Lily?" Sarah asked, signing and speaking at once. Emma pointed to the door. "Inside. She fell from the stage during our dance practice." Robert and Sarah entered together to find Lily on a small cot, her ankle wrapped in a bandage. She was crying silently. When she saw them, she reached out with both arms. "Dad!" "Sarah," she said aloud through her tears, her pronunciation clearer than ever despite her distress. They rushed to her side, each taking one of her hands. "Does it hurt badly?" Robert asked. Lily nodded, then signed, "I ruined our dance. Now we can't be in the talent show." "That's not true," Sarah assured her. "Your ankle will heal, and we can adjust the dance." The school nurse approached with an ice pack. "It's just a mild sprain. She should rest it for a few days. We'll take her home now," Robert said. As Robert carried Lily to the car with Emma and Grace following close behind, the principal stopped Sarah. "Miss Johnson, I've been meaning to tell you how remarkable the girls' progress has been," she said. "Their teachers say they're responding to verbal instructions now. It's extraordinary." "Thank you," Sarah replied. "They've worked very hard." "We're all looking forward to their performance at the talent show," the principal added. "It means so much to have them participate fully for the first time." In the car, Lily sat between her sisters in the back seat, still sniffling occasionally. Emma held her hand while Grace told jokes to cheer her up. "We heard you fall," Grace said. "It was a loud sound." "It was scary," Lily admitted. Robert caught Sarah's eye from the driver's seat. In that brief look was a recognition. Their shared concern for the girls had momentarily pushed aside all other issues. Back at home, Robert carried Lily to the sofa while Sarah arranged pillows to elevate her ankle. The triplets stayed together, Emma and Grace refusing to leave their sister's side. "I'll make some hot chocolate," Robert said. "Sarah, could you help me in the kitchen?" In the kitchen, Robert filled the kettle with water and turned to Sarah. "Thank you for coming with me today," he said quietly. "The way you and I handled this together, it helped the girls feel secure." "Of course," Sarah replied. "I care about them so much." Robert was silent for a moment, then said, "I've been thinking about our conversation earlier. About you leaving." Sarah waited, her heart beating faster. "I don't want you to go," Robert said finally. "Not just because of the devices or the research partnership. The girls need you. And maybe—" He hesitated. "Maybe I do too." Before Sarah could respond, the doorbell rang. "That would be Dr. Peterson," Robert said. "He's bringing the partnership documents." The formal signing of the Harrison-Medisonic partnership took place in Robert's study that afternoon. The agreement established the Harrison-Johnson Neural Audio Initiative, with Sarah named as research director. "All the legal issues are resolved," Dr. Peterson told Sarah stiffly, "though I still don't approve of your methods. The important thing is that this technology will help thousands of children," Robert interjected, placing a document before Peterson, "including this clause about affordability." Peterson frowned as he read. "Price controls?" "That wasn't part of our discussion." "It is now," Robert said firmly. "I want these devices available to every child who needs them, regardless of their family's financial situation." Sarah looked at Robert with gratitude. This was exactly what she had hoped for but hadn't dared to ask. Peterson sighed but signed the document. Medisonic agrees to these terms. After Peterson left, Sarah found Robert looking at family photographs in the hallway. "That affordability clause means a lot to me," she said. "I know," Robert replied. "It's what Catherine would have wanted too." He pointed to a photograph of Catherine holding her cello. She believed music belonged to everyone. Over the next 2 weeks, preparations for the talent show intensified. Lily's ankle healed quickly and the girls practiced their dance daily. Their progress with speech and hearing continued to impress everyone. One afternoon, Emma approached Sarah with a notebook full of carefully written words. "I'm going to say these at the beginning of our dance," she announced. "An introduction." Sarah read Emma's neat handwriting. "Hello, we are Emma, Lily, and Grace Harrison. This is our first time hearing music. We hope you enjoy our dance." "Emma, this is wonderful," Sarah said. "Your speech is so clear now." Emma beamed with pride. "I practice every day." Meanwhile, Grace had become fascinated with explaining the science behind their hearing devices. She carried Sarah's simplified drawings to school and shared them with her classmates. "The sound goes in here," she explained to a group of curious children, pointing to her ear. "Then the device helps my brain understand it." Even Lily had overcome her initial fears. Despite her injured ankle, she was determined to perform. Each day she practiced standing on her tiptoes, strengthening her legs for the dance. "Mom would be proud," she told Robert one evening, using both sign and speech. "Because I'm being brave like she was." The night before the talent show, Robert invited Sarah to join him in his study after the girls were asleep. "There's something I want to show you," he said, pulling an old scrapbook from his desk drawer. Inside were newspaper clippings, research papers, and printed emails, all about hearing technology for children. Some of the articles featured Sarah's early research. "Catherine made this," Robert explained. "During her pregnancy, she researched everything about hearing loss. She had a cousin who was deaf, so she knew it might affect our children." "I had no idea," Sarah said, turning the pages carefully. "She found your research," Robert continued. "She wrote to you once, actually, to ask about your early studies at Columbia." Sarah looked up in surprise. "I don't remember." "You wouldn't," Robert said gently. "You probably received hundreds of such inquiries, but she kept your response." He pointed to a printed email. "You wrote that you hoped your work would someday help children experience music as a birthright, not a privilege." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she recognized her own words from years ago. "Mrs. Collins showed me this scrapbook yesterday," Robert said. "She told me Catherine would have approved of what you've done for our girls despite the unconventional methods." The day of the talent show arrived bright and clear. The school auditorium was packed with parents, teachers, and students. The Harrison triplets were scheduled as the final performance. Backstage, Sarah helped the girls prepare. They wore matching blue dresses, Catherine's favorite color. Their red hair was arranged with blue ribbons. Each wore her hearing device, now smaller and more refined thanks to Sarah's continuous improvements. "Remember," Sarah told them, "if you get nervous, just look at your dad in the front row." "We're not nervous," Emma said confidently. "We've been waiting our whole lives for this." From the stage wings, Sarah watched as earlier acts performed. Robert sat in the front row, his face a mixture of anxiety and pride. Dr. Marcus was beside him, along with Mrs. Collins and several executives from both Harrison Technologies and Medisonic. Finally, it was time. The principal announced, "And now, for our final performance, please welcome Emma, Lily, and Grace Harrison performing the Miracle Dance." Emma stepped forward alone first, just as they had practiced. She spoke clearly into the microphone. "Hello. We are Emma, Lily, and Grace Harrison. Until 3 months ago, we had never heard any sounds. Now we can hear, thanks to special technology. This dance is for our mom, who loved music, and for our dad, who never stopped believing in us." The audience was completely silent as the music began. Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 21, Catherine's favorite piece. The triplets moved onto the stage together, their movements perfectly synchronized with the music. The choreography told their story, beginning with the 3 girls moving separately, disconnected, then gradually coming together as the music built. Lily showed no sign of her recent injury as she performed a perfect solo during the gentlest passage of music. In the front row, Robert couldn't hold back his tears. Sarah, watching from backstage, felt her own eyes well up. As the music reached its conclusion, the triplets came together center stage. When the final notes played, they spoke in unison, their 3 voices blending, "We can hear you clapping." The audience erupted in applause and a standing ovation. Many were openly crying. Robert stood first, applauding so hard his hands hurt. The triplets bowed, their faces shining with joy. 2 weeks later, on a sunny May afternoon, the Harrison home was filled with laughter and music for the triplets' 9th birthday party. Children from their school ran through the garden while parents chatted on the patio. The girls' hearing devices were now barely visible, tucked neatly behind their ears. Inside, Sarah arranged 9 candles on a large cake decorated with musical notes. She wore Catherine's musical note necklace, which Robert had given to her permanently the night after the talent show. "Need any help?" Robert asked, entering the kitchen and placing his hand lightly on her shoulder, a gesture that had become natural between them. "Just about ready," Sarah replied. "Are the girls still opening presents?" "Yes, though Grace is more interested in taking apart her new clock to see how it works," Robert laughed. Mrs. Collins bustled in with extra plates. "Those children are going through cupcakes like they're being paid to eat them," she said cheerfully. Her initial suspicion of Sarah had transformed into respectful appreciation. When it was time for cake, everyone gathered around the dining room table. Emma, Lily, and Grace stood together behind their cake, their red hair catching the sunlight from the windows. "Make a wish," Robert told them. "But don't say it out loud," Sarah added with a smile, "or it won't come true." The girls looked at each other, then closed their eyes. After a moment of concentration, they leaned forward together and blew out all 9 candles. The room erupted in cheers and applause. "What did you wish for?" a classmate asked. Emma smiled. "We can't tell you, but it's already coming true." Later, as the party was winding down, Robert and Sarah stood on the patio watching the girls play a musical game with their friends in the garden. The Harrison home, once so silent and somber, now rang with children's voices and laughter. "The Medisonic board approved our expansion plan yesterday," Robert said. "The Harrison-Johnson devices will be available in 5 countries by next year." "And the affordability program?" Sarah asked. "Fully funded," Robert confirmed. "No child will be denied because their family can't pay." Sarah watched as Grace demonstrated to her friends how sound waves moved through air, using ripples in the bird bath as a visual aid. "Catherine would be proud," Sarah said softly, "of the girls. of you." Robert took her hand. "What do you think she would say about everything that's happened?" "About us?" Sarah pointed to where the triplets were now dancing freely to music playing from outdoor speakers, moving with the natural grace of children who had always been able to hear. "I think," she said with certainty, "she's already telling us." As the golden, late afternoon sun bathed the garden, the Harrison family, now including Sarah, gathered for a photograph beneath the old oak tree. The triplets stood in front, their faces bright with happiness, while Robert and Sarah stood behind them, united by love for three remarkable girls who had moved from silence into a world full of sound, from isolation into connection. It was, in every sense, a miracle dance. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen